Hi everyone, welcome back to another session of 8x Pixel Expo 8 monthly webinar global webcast, the December series, happening on every 8th of the month as we convene over a united cause. That is our love for the ocean and diving. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this post to win the collector's edition of your favorite scuba diving, Australasia, and Ocean Planet Diverholic 2021 and 2022 digital diving magazine free. For today's session is a sharing called Conversation with David Strike from Carriers to Cave with Brian Kakuk. David Strike is a former instructor, trainer, and certifier with a background in military, commercial, recreational, and technical diving. David is authorized several hundred dive-related articles. The 8X Ambassador for Technical Diving, Pioneer, he is a recipient of the 8X Lifetime Achievement Award and a fellow of the Explorers Club in New York. So now we will let David introduce the session with Brian as he shares his experiences with us. The floor is yours, David. Thank you.
I thought you were going to introduce Brian as well. No.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So it's over to me. Thank you, Kushi. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest this evening is Brian Kakuk. I'm sorry, I can just see a big K in the middle of the screen.
Let me make sure I'm sharing my...
No, I can see you, Brian, okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Brian is the founder director of the Bahamas Caves Research Foundation. He's the co-owner operator of the Bahama Underground Cave and Technical Diving Facility. He is a very prominent cave diving explorer, particularly in the Bahamas, where he now resides. He's an author. He's an underwater photographer. He's involved in scientific research. He has a very strong background in diving. And one of the things that always counts in his favor, he's ex-Navy. So, Brian, it was to try and do justice to your CV. It would take far longer than just the short amount of time that we have. So I'm going to skip through a lot of things, but I'm going to ask questions. The very first one is, you're obviously from the USA, but you live and reside in the Bahamas. Can you just tell briefly whereabouts you live?
So I live in the northern Bahamas. We're a very large chain of islands. And so the two northernmost islands is called the Little Bahama Bank. It's all one platform in the ocean out there. And that's Grand Bahama and Abaco Island. And I'm on Abaco Island. So it's almost the northernmost Grand Bahama Island is just slightly north of us. So if you look at the Bahama chain, we're up at the very top on the right-hand side.
Right, that's not too far away then from Florida.
Not at all. I think we're 160 miles or something like that.
You could swim that on a good day.
Yeah, a flight from Fort Lauderdale. If it's a jet prop, it's about 50 minutes, 45, 50 minutes.
Right.
So it's not too.
Okay. Now, how long have you lived there?
I moved here in 1988, so it's 33 years. I've actually lived in the Bahamas longer than I lived in the U.S. now.
Really?
It's been quite a long time. Yeah, quite a long time.
And obviously you love it there. And
yeah, there's home now.
And what's your role there? You're involved in a number of activities there, some scientific.
Right. So through cave diving, I've been involved in a lot of different things. Some film work, feature films, documentary work, and then obviously exploration is the main reason I'm here. That's my passion is exploration, and then I actually got brought here through the military. I got out of the military and became a contractor, a civilian contractor on a military base here in Andros Island, which is the largest island. Right. And so I was a diver as a contractor for a number of years. And that's when I found Blue Holes, was over on Andros Island. And I'm sure you've read Palmer's books and heard lots of stories from George Benjamin back in the day of exploration in Andros Island. And that was, that was an amazing place to start your cave diving career, that's for sure.
Right. Good. Now, stepping right back, how did you get into diving? What was the first initial attraction?
I think, I'm like a lot of other folks, I was sitting in front of the telly on Sunday evenings watching Jacques Cousteau and then the Sea Hunt episodes. And I just, remember being sort of 8 years old, 9 years old, and having the Encyclopedia Britannica in front of me and open to the diver page. And they had a photograph of the hard hat diver on one side from the U.S. Navy diving manual. And they had a photograph of a scuba diver on the other side, also from the U.S. Navy diving manual. And then little, arrows pointing to all the different parts of the gear. And I that is so cool. And I think I really just wanted to be a diver from a very, very young age. I just always wanted to do. And, that's the reason I joined the Navy, is with the sole purpose of becoming a Navy hard hat diver.
Ah. So tell me a little bit about the Navy training.
Well, the Navy training is very intense. I almost didn't become a Navy diver because my math was so bad. I don't know. I was too busy surfing and diving to actually go to high school. I didn't go a lot, but I was just able to eke through high school and get my diploma. And I was on a bus to San Diego the next day, right after graduation. And then we did whatever I had to do to become a diver.
Yeah. How long was the course?
I think it's 12 weeks.
Right.
12 weeks of pretty intense stuff. They try to weed you out straight away. They only want the people that really, really want to be there.
Yeah.
So they physically, tear you down and build you back up. And they're constantly trying to get you to fail. Really, they're waiting for you to mess up, and it's pretty intense. I went to school in Navy dive school in Coronado, California, which is the same base as the U.S. Navy SEALs train, where BUDS is, basic underwater demolitions. And so we're sitting there getting our brains beat out by our instructors, and then the SEALs come by. And they just look like hell in a handbasket because they've been just beaten for weeks. And then our instructors look at us and they're like, these guys are complaining. Look at these guys.
What sort of equipment? What sort of equipment were you using, bro?
So when I first got into school, it was the last class for Mark V, the last class to be taught Mark V.
Really?
And so we moved over to Mark 12, which was a horrid device. Just the CO2 buildup on that thing was just incredible, just horrible. The comms were a bit better than Mark V, but I just wish that I had never had to actually dive that rig. We were diving what we call Mark 1s, basically a Kirby Morgan bandmast that's been modified for the military. So I spent lots of time in Mark 1 in the Kirby Morgan bandmast. In fact, most of my ship's husbandry career, working under ships, doing salvage and stuff like that, that was mostly in Mark 1. And then toward the end, I got stationed in Fort Lauderdale, and it was mostly just scuba at that point for my last 2 years.
And the Mark V, I bet you wish you'd hung on to one of those.
Yeah, every once in a while I go online and look at how much the auctions are asking for the antiques, right?
Yeah.
Wow, I definitely, maybe someday when I'm rich and famous, I'll try to find one.
They're like hen's teeth, aren't they? And gold.
Absolutely.
So the Navy took you then to the Bahamas, or
it did. So I was like I said, I was in Fort Lauderdale, and our unit was putting these tracking devices underneath of our U.S. submarines. They'd come into Fort Lauderdale, and we'd go underneath and attach these things. And basically, they were tracking units so that they could calibrate a lot of sonar and radar and stuff like that, because they were going to go out to the base in the Bahamas and do trials. And so the installers from the base would come to Fort Lauderdale, give us the devices, we'd install them. And then this guy started chatting me up about, hey, I heard you were at a point where you can get out of the Navy. And I was like, no, I'm a lifer. I'm always going to stay in. I actually had orders to EOD school. I was going to head off to EOD with a SEAL friend of mine. And he says, well, you should just come out and check us out here. When we're looking, you have to be an ex-Navy diver to get the job. We have a recompression chamber, and it's all run by the Navy. He says, just send in a resume, come out and get they do the interview, they take you down to the beach, they try to get you drunk, and then at the end of the day, you just say, no thanks, and you get a free day in the Bahamas. And I was like, okay, well, that was 1988, so here I am.
Oh, yeah. Lovely. Oh, wow. And so what, you obviously you got the job.
Yeah, I got the job and stayed there for I was there for 7 years the first time. I kind of went back and forth. So I kind of got tired of the military stuff and got introduced into scientific diving through cave diving. Now, I was on Andros only for a couple of years, or a year before I got into cave diving there. And that consumed me. At first, it was actually through photography. I was trying to find something that not a lot of people had done yet. Everybody had a picture of an angelfish and a sponge and a coral. And, I was looking to diversify a little bit. And I saw this, I don't know if you remember these, but there was old VHS tapes called Sea Fans Videos. We had them in America. And it was basically a video magazine. And our dive club on the base had all these videos. And at the end of one of those videos was an article about multiple lighting techniques in underwater caves by some redneck named Wes Skiles, who I'd never heard of before. And so I'm watching this and I'm going, these are just amazing images. He's using the strobes, the flash, the slave strobes in the background and all this other stuff. And the images were just stunning. And, very arrogantly, I'm like, I'm a Navy diver. If this redneck can do this, I can do it. And I grab my cameras and strobes and I go off to the first blue hole that I knew of. We used to get lobsters out of them, and promptly tried to kill myself, and because I didn't know what I was doing and didn't adhere to the little disclaimer in the video saying, don't do this without training and proper equipment. And that taught me that, hey, you need to go and get the training and use the right gear. And so it's
a matter of, just to cut across you, what sort of equipment were you using for that? This was obviously, you were a civilian diver by now.
Yeah, by now I'm a civilian diver. And so, I was using just a back plate and wing and stuff like that. And then after that first episode of, silting the cave out, trying to place strobes and everything, and not, the one thing I did listen to on the video was to use a line, and that saved my butt. That got me out of there. In fact, I even had to go in later after the cave cleared out to recover the strobes. So at that point I said, I need to get this training. So I started reading as much as I could. I got a copy of Blueprint for Survival by Sheck Exley. I pried it out of another guy's hands who had actually gone through the training. He didn't want to give it to me. You're going to go and get an instructor, but then you had to go all the way to Florida, and there weren't as many instructors. This is 1990 or 1989. And so I just started reading as much as I could, and Palmer's books, Rob Palmer's books, were like my Bibles. I copied the gear. I was able to make my own side mounts. I couldn't afford a backplate and a wing and a manifold back then. I was poor and in my early 20s, and so, but I could make these side mount things that I saw Palmer and Farr wearing in these books and in some of these videos. So I have a lot of British influence in my beginnings in my cave diving, because it's a lot to do with Rob Palmer, who I would become friends with later in life and do some diving with, and Martin Farr. Martin's been here as well. So it's kind of nice.
Martin actually came over for one of the early Oztecs.
Very good.
Was delightful guy. And but
quite.
Rob Palmer was doing a lot with the Blue Holes, wasn't he?
He was. So he started the Blue Holes Foundation with his wife, And they did that for about 2 years, I think, before he passed, before he had his accident in the Red Sea.
Yeah.
And his wife tried to keep it going for a little while, and just the website is still up, but I haven't seen much. She hasn't done much in the country.
So in terms of training, so you were doing the cave diving sort of without being sort of officially sanctioned and trained.
Right. Yeah.
So what did you do then in terms of training?
Well, so I started, the thing is, it started out, like I said, started out in photography, but a lot of the places that I was going to take photographs turned out to be virgin. I mean, here as a neophyte, as somebody who's just learning how to do this, all of a sudden I'm laying line in caves that no one's ever been in. And man, that bug bit hard. That just became an absolute obsession. And to this day, actually, I mean, it's still, my greatest thing in life to do. So, that's really how I got into the exploration. And then eventually I started meeting scientists who were, found out that I was going into these places, and they said, hey, have you ever seen this or done that or found one of these or observed any of this? I'm like, oh yeah, I see that all the time. They're like, wow, could you get us some? Yeah. And then I got really intrigued because they got so excited if I'd come out with a critter or a stowl or something like that. They just get so excited. I said, wow, this is really intriguing. And so I started hanging out more with the smart people, the scientists who really understood what was going on in there. And so it's been this amazing roundabout where, you start from photography, then exploration, then it move into science. And then once I started seeing the big picture of how amazing these places are, and they're not just holes in the ground, they're not just voids to explore, they're these amazing ecosystems. I said, man, these are very much deserve some sort of protection. So now I move into conservation. Well, you can't conserve something, you can't protect something unless you get people passionate about it. And how do you do that with a wet, dark void, black void, I mean, as dark as you can get? So then came back into the photography. The only way to get people passionate about it was to make videos and make images that they could say, wow, these are amazing. And then, then you can actually get people to say, yeah, that absolutely needs to be protected. There's nothing like that in the world. And so it's been this amazing, roundabout.
So you're using then, or presumably, open circuit air for these initial
right
things.
Yeah, so that's again, this is back in the day, so deep air was very, very common. I mean, we were every weekend I was doing almost 100 meters on air, pushing cave and side mount. I mean, it was how we survived the late 80s and early 90s. I to this day just can't believe that we actually did. But you're at 365 feet on air in a cave, and you're not even at the bottom. It's you never do anything like that now. It's just totally unnecessary. Between rebreathers and having access to trimix. I mean, the only tables for trimix back then were Bill Hamilton's tables, and they cost an absolute fortune.
Yeah.
It was, what was really liberating was when Sheck wrote Dr. X. Yeah. And that, I don't know if you remember that program, but I still have it on the shelf right behind me. It's the little 3.5-inch floppy disk right behind me.
And you actually trained with Sheck as well, didn't you?
I did. He was my mixed gas instructor. So one of the I did eventually get certified through my guru Paul Heinerth, who's one of my best friends. And the reason I got certified was they were having the Wakulla 2 project, and Paul had been on Wakulla 1 with Bill Stone and Wes and Sheck and all those guys. And I was like, man, I will do anything. I'll wash people's wetsuits. I'll carry their tanks. I'll do whatever it takes to get in on this project. And I met Paul at the first dive show that Mike Meduno put together. Right. And so I'm like, dude, I will do whatever. He's like, dude, you're not even certified. I mean, you're doing all these big dives, but you're not even certified. They're not going to let you. Let you in. It's a state park. So I'm like, well, you're an instructor, right? he said, yeah. I said, well, how about I'll trade you a free week of cave diving for not a sign off, an actual course. And you come on out and I'll take you in these amazing caves and we actually do the course. Because at that point, I had only done solo side mount. I had never shared air with anybody. I didn't know how to use a long hose. I didn't know how to use manifolded doubles and do shutdowns and that type of thing. It was strictly just, exploration, mostly solo in side mounted cylinders. So he came out and certified me, and then I applied for the Wakala 2 project. They said, well, come to the States and we'll do an interview with you. They said, bring maps, bring images, whatever. And so I showed up and I laid out these maps and they're like, you're doing this by yourself? And I was like, yeah, that's all we have out here is this deep stuff. And there's, I'm just going to go where the cave goes. I didn't care about depth. I just cared where the cave went. And they're like, I was hoping they're just going to let me be on the team. And they're like, you want to be the dive safety officer?
Yeah.
I was like, no, you don't want me to be the dive safety officer. Because of my military background, I'm pretty regimented. We talk about doing this on a wing and a prayer in the beginning, but I was very protocol oriented, and my Bibles were Blueprint for Survival, and all of the learnings that Rob and Martin had done in their books. I looked at their mistakes and said, well, we're not going to do that, and so. Yeah,
just back to the Wakala 2 project. That was Bill Stone.
Correct. Yeah. So
can you explain that for the benefit of people that might not be familiar with it?
So Bill Stone is the head of the U.S. Deep Caving Team, and they do amazing expeditions all over the world. They had his passion is Huatla down in Mexico right now, which he's trying to make one of the deepest caves in the world. So he had gotten into Wakala Springs, which back in the 90s, that was numero uno. Everybody wanted to be in Wakala because it was big, it was deep, it was long. It hadn't been connected to the other parts of the systems yet, and so there was the Woodville Karst Plain project, the WKPP were working in there, and so Bill was trying to get in there with some new technology. So they had the original Wakala 1 project, and that was in 87 or something like that. And then, and so that was an incredible feat. They had this amazing habitat that Bill had designed. Bill's an amazing engineer. And so that was, the up and coming technology, what those guys were doing. They were using Heliox for their dives. Wasn't even using Trimix at the time. And it was just incredible. And I saw the book from my friend Brad Pissell, who was also on that Wakala 1. He was actually a cave diver out here in the Bahamas. And he and I got really close. We got to be really good friends and survived some dives we probably shouldn't have survived. And so, yeah, he introduced me to Paul. And so Wakala 2, so Wakala Springs, the whole cave is running between 280 feet and 310 feet, I believe. And it's miles and miles long. So with Wakala 2, what they decided was to just do this enormous, technically oriented project where they were going to bring in a barge, put a saturation system on this barge in the spring. And we were actually going to go off and do saturation missions on these new fangled rebreathers, the Cislunar Mark 5P. And, so we're doing 8.5 hours at 300 feet, which is essentially a saturation dive. And then we'd go in and we were, it wasn't just about exploration, it was about the mapping. He had designed this $1 million 3D mapper using sonar and inertial guidance system from an ICBM missile. And then this big computer system inside of it for loading all this information. And you would drive this sort of 2.5 meter scooter with all this stuff on it through the cave, and it would ping the walls and make a sonar image of the walls. And then because of the inertial guidance system, it was actually very, very accurate. And then we would realign it with these cave pingers. So we had these devices where we would set them in the cave, and they could find them within sort of 3 meters on the surface.
Right.
And then they GPS that coordinate, and that when we took that mapping device through there, there was a certain place on the mapper that you would take right over where that pinger had been. We'd leave a marker exactly where that thing had been. And so you would actually park it right over that marker and then push a button. And what that did was it brought your map back into alignment with known GPS coordinates on the surface. So I don't forget how many kilometers of cave we mapped in 3D with sonar that was accurate to within a meter for every kilometer mapped. And this is 1998.
Yeah.
So pretty amazing technology to be involved with.
And so you were then using the cislunar rebreather?
Right. Yeah. So at one point we were actually using twin cislunar Mark 5P. So if you've ever seen a cis, it's sort of like having a hotel refrigerator on your back, your hotel room refrigerator. And so the guys, Rick Stanton, Jason Mallinson, Bill Stone, and a bunch of us just sat in the trailer one day, and they said, how can we make two of these into one unit? And all the guys just started moving hoses around and doing all this other stuff. And Bill was on his CAD and he designed this whole backpack system for a double. It was absolutely incredible.
Boy.
And that thing was huge. So you could barely, Jill Heiners can tell you, stories about when she and Mark Meadows were exploring B Tunnel and Wakulla, that the units were so big, and then we had so much bailout that the scooters couldn't push us against the current. She actually had the scooter on full and pulling on the bottom as well, trying to make forward motion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'd love to redo that project again using my technology that I use today. That would be amazing.
Now, just back to the Bahamas. So what happened after Wakulla? Did you returned obviously to the Bahamas?
Yeah, so I continued on with my exploration. Eventually, because I was working so much with the scientists, I needed to get research permits through the government, and so I had to have some kind of name to put those research permits under. So by name only, I decided on Bahamas Caves Research Foundation, and so I was having research permits, and it was very open back then. I could just list my collaborators, and I could do one week I'd be doing global climate change studies with scientists from University of Miami, collecting stalagmites, and they would slab them and then date the growth rings and that type of thing. And then the next week I'm working with an astromicrobiologist from Penn State University, whose lab is funded by NASA, looking for some of the first microbes that were ever on Earth.
Wow.
There's all these, I call them all the ologies. I've been involved with all these different biology, archaeology, geology, astromicrobiology. And as someone who barely graduated from high school, to be involved with these types of folks is incredible, and to be very much involved in making true, cutting edge discoveries. I've discovered many new species of animals. Was the first guy to realize that this Saharan dust that we're all talking about comes across the Atlantic, was actually accumulating in caves. I found it in the caves here, and showed it to the scientists at University of Miami. They're like, "Holy crap, that's exactly what that is. That's Saharan dust." And then this whole study came out because of it. So some dumb surfer kid from California who barely graduated high school to be involved in that kind of stuff. The best education ever,
So, because you've written a lot of sort of scientific papers as well.
I'm a collaborator. I'm a junior collaborator. So I'm the guy who write the site descriptions. I'll describe where the material was found. That type. As far as the other stuff, that's like way over my head, and I just feel very very fortunate that they allow me to even be involved. But when you're the guy who's actually bringing it out, then they let you participate.
Now, tell me, how easy was it to get gas, to get helium, for example?
It wasn't easy at all. So in the beginning, I was able to buy a few cylinders from the military base. And so once I started using Dr. X, Sheck Exley's Dr. X, then we started getting away from deep air and realizing, wow, this is really incredible stuff. It was extremely expensive. Even to this day, I actually had to buy some cylinders and then have them filled and then shipped over. So I promise you, I have some of the world's most expensive helium sitting right here in the shop. It's just ridiculous how much we have to pay for it. But and what's great is I have about 2 years supply, because now we're using rebreathers, and so that's going to last me quite a long time.
What are you using, as a matter of interest, the rebreathers?
I've gone through this big evolution. Obviously I've dived the cysts and then megalodons. I was into the megalodons for quite a long time, and I still think they're an amazing rebreather. Leon Scammahorn has done a great job on the megalodons, but because of the way the caves are in my neighborhood here, we have very extensive cave systems, but they're divided by collapses, and the meg wouldn't fit through the collapses. So I was waiting and waiting. In fact, I even got out of rebreathers for a little while because they just couldn't go where I needed to go through these breakdowns. So I was strictly open circuit side mount for a number of years, until people started going with the side mount rebreathers and developing side mount rebreathers.
Yeah. I was going to say, actually, I've got, you might recognize this.
Yeah.
This fine volume.
Yeah, that needs to be rewritten at this point. The technology has changed so much. So in the very back of that, we talk a little bit about how side mount CCR was in its infancy right back there.
Yeah.
Back then, that was when that was written. So what I did was
you actually said, I'm going to cut across you here. You actually said, in my opinion, the entire future of underwater cave exploration is going to make leaps and bounds with the design of safe, efficient, side-mounted CCR units.
Right. And
my
then
goal
and I
was
was
to
right.
get rid of all open circuit bailout. Yep.
Yeah, I was right. And so they were going to have this, Tech Dive USA. I had heard that a bunch of manufacturers were going to show up with side-mounted CCRs, their version of it. Many of them were their back mount units trying to be side mount units. And so I went there with the idea that what I'll do is I'll show up and I'll have everyone take me through their units, soup to nuts. I mean, every bolt, every nut. Why did you do this? Why did you design it this way? And I'll look and see which ones I really like. And then in the end, I'll ask everybody if they'll give me one for free. And maybe I'll walk away with one. And actually, what turned out is everyone except for one actually offered to give me one for free. I was like, okay, well, now what do I do? And I was talking with Mike Young who had taken over KISS Rebreathers at that time. And he convinced me, the biggest reason being is that his KISS Sidekick, which is just a completely side-mounted unit, what he had done, I had seen divers like on SF2s and some other rigs. And when I watched him in the water, with every inhalation and exhalation, that rebreather wobbled. There was a big breathing moment and some momentum of the unit, because it changes buoyancy so drastically. And the reason being is that they either had the counter lung either above or below the canister, or they had two little counter lungs, again, up above the canister. And that changed the buoyancy of the unit based on where those counter lungs were. Well, Mike took the canister and put it into the whole unit as a counter lung. And what that did is that really deadened out that breathing moment. Right. And I said, wow, that looks really good. And it looks really efficient as far as scrubber use. And so I asked Mike, I said, how about a freebie? and he's like, yeah, absolutely. And that was the best thing that's ever happened to me in my diving career, I think, is that relationship with Mike, because not only did he just give me a free rebreather, and then I started developing, everybody develops this to their liking, and we tweak it and all this other stuff. But he was very, very open to mods and saying, why are you, what do you need now? What can make this better for you? And so now my unit that I use now is what I call a KISS Lunar. And so it's actually a KISS sidekick with a cislunar scrubber. And for those of you who don't know cislunar rebreathers, Bill Stone designed the only scrubber that had a hydrophobic membrane in it, to where you couldn't take a caustic flood. You couldn't flood the scrubbing medium. You could actually, when we trained on the cislunar, part of the training was Rich Pyle would come up behind you, tap you on the shoulder. You'd switch over to open circuit. He'd unscrew your exhalation hose, flood the whole unit, put it back on, tap you on the shoulder again. You do these little roll maneuvers, get all the water out, and you go right back on the unit. You cannot do that with any other unit. It doesn't work.
Wow.
You're gonna burn your lungs out. So I've always loved that CIS canister, because it just gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling of, I'm not going to take a caustic.
Yeah.
And so I ended up using that same canister in my Megalodons for many years. And then I got Mike to adapt a head for the KISS sidekick to accept that canister. And that's my baby. I mean, that thing's like part of my body now. That gets used every single day, whether it's for teaching or exploration or science or film work or whatever. I love that thing.
Just back very, very sort of briefly, one of your other explorations, this was the one that really sort of got me. 1996. You were a team member in the Sistema Edgdo Jacinta project.
Oh, yeah, down in Mexico.
Yeah, and you said you got to a place called the Mouse Hole.
Yeah, that was back when I was a bit thinner. So there, when we went down there, there was the guy who ran the project, the guy who knew the cave the best was a guy named Buddy Quattlebaum, and a lot of the old Mexico cave divers will remember Buddy. He started Hidden Worlds down there in Akumal, and that's where Dos Ojos, the very famous Dos Ojos cave system is. And there was a big competition between Mike Madden's group with Nahoch, and then this group that was doing Dos Ojos, trying to make them the longest cave in the world. So there was a lot of competition back and forth. They had a summer project or a winter project, and then Buddy had his summer project. And so we got invited to go down there. And there was a cave system that had over 40,000 feet of cave right next to, and it was very close to being connected to this Dos Ojos system. And Buddy knew that this one tight little hole was going to be the connection, and from his surveys and everything, but nobody could make it through there. And then they heard that I was doing a lot of no mount back then, which is basically you don't have anything on you, you just have the cylinder, a single cylinder. It's redundant. You have a H valve and tooled regulators and that kind of thing. And so there's some kind of weird sound going on outside. Let me see if it's my AC unit real quick. A frog jumped into my AC unit. It was being chopped up.
Oh, ouch.
Sorry about that. That's the tropics.
Okay.
Anyway, so nobody been able to get through this, and so I designed this or set up this 100 cubic foot cylinder with an H valve, and I wrapped it in a BC, and I basically you couldn't even fit a harness through it. I couldn't even wear a harness to get through this thing. So just had this thing. I had like a little bandolier with an attachment on it like this. And when I got to the hole, I ditched my whole side mount kit, harness and everything, and then put this thing on and went through. And after about 100 meters or so, I found the other line and connected it, and that brought 40,000 feet of cave into Dos Ojos, and they said that made it the world record at the time for the longest underwater cave. It was short-lived. The Nahoch, again, the next year, they went and did their project, and now, I mean, neither one of those caves are nearly as long as like Ashbaha or Sakaktoon or any of those.
Yeah.
And then that'll go on forever. That sort of competition thing.
You've taken part in quite a few of those sort of expeditions that are pushing the cave limits. So you did one here in Australia on the Roe Plains.
Yeah, so that was amazing. So you have obviously some amazing explorers there in Australia, Craig Challen, Richard Harris, and then one that's not, he's well known in Australia, but not outside Australia, is Paul Hosey. So we were down in the Nullarbor, and gosh, the name of the cave is escaping me right now. Anyway, we were Paul Hosey was actually showing us the cave, and sorry, it's old timers disease. He was actually showing us this cave, and we went off on this great dive, and we came out, and we're sort of in this little dry grotto with pools of water in it. And as we were coming out, I said, have you ever looked in that little puddle right there? He's like, oh, I've been meaning to do that for years, and I just never have. And he's got all his kit, and he's still got some gas. He's like, why don't we just do it right now? So, all right. And so I'm sitting there holding the end of the line. He's like, just hold on to this, because when he laid in that puddle, his back was up out of the water. That's how shallow it was. And he's like waddling up against the wall. And then I'm holding onto the line, and I think Ken Smith was right next to me. We're holding the line, and then all of a sudden you see his body bend, and he's swashing around, and his legs and stuff are all up out of the water, swashing around in this chocolate brown water. And all of a sudden, slowly his body goes down into this hole. And an hour later, he comes back and he goes, it freaking goes, it goes. And Al Walgan is the name of the cave, and which is now the longest cave in underwater cave in Australia, I believe. Right. And so I got to be there right for that, and so we all immediately just the next day we all just piled there, and we all got to lay line. So I'm very fortunate to be one of the few Americans who's actually laid line in Australia. I think there's only a handful of us, and that was only because of Paul, because that was all him. Sure.
And back to the blue holes as well. You've done some amazing dives in those.
Yeah, we're so spoiled here. I mean, we have clear, warm water, and we have Andros Island is very well known for deep caves. So I've got some dives in excess of 120 meters in Andros. We have now the second deepest blue hole in the world. They just found another one in the South China Sea. That thing's 300 meters to the bottom of that one. But we have one that's at 220 meters here. That Jim King has been to the bottom of back in the 90s. I think he went to the bottom in 96 or 97. And that's 220 meters. So that's one of the few caves that I have access to in this country that I haven't been to the bottom yet. And I wanna do that. I have explored the cave associated with that particular site. It's called Dean's Blue Hole, and it's a magnificent, beautiful site, just incredible. And but a lot of people didn't realize that there was actually a cave system running at 50 meters off the sides of that big giant pit. And so Jim King and his group had sort of dabbled in it a little bit, but it's definitely out, and they were all diving back mounts, and he told me about it, and so I always promised to go back there. And over a few years ago, I went in there and laid all this line and mapped it, and it's a very cool system. I actually found a beautifully decorated room that's way at the back of one of the caves on that side. On one of the sides, and just full of stalactites and stalagmites, which is kind of unusual for an ocean cave. No, I mean a completely marine cave. It's this thing. Our ocean caves are very tidal, so they suck water in for 6 hours and they blow water out for 6 hours, and each one has a different lag time and different time associated with when the tide changes. So you really have to learn each cave and understand when the tides are going to turn. And you can use them to your advantage. Conch Sound Blue Hole, which Palmer and Farr set a world record in, which is on the north part of Andros Island. Because I was local, I was able to actually learn the tides and use them to actually suck me in. And then by the time I would get toward the end of the line, the tide would turn based on the timing, and then it would start blowing out. And then I could use the current to find new cave, and then I'd get a free ride out at the end of my exploration. So you can actually use these very strong currents to your advantage.
And are they very, very beautiful?
That they are. I mean, to be able to go into a cave system that's just filled with marine life too. I mean, there's the walls are just psychedelic with all these different colored sponges, and there's big bright red shrimps called parhippolite. They just like pop out of the background. They're just extremely red. And then, we have eels and crabs and lobsters and stuff so you're sitting there, doing your cave dive. How many cave dives can you go and see lobsters on your cave dives?
What happens in terms of the marine life, finding it? What every time you sort of see something, do you wonder whether it's the first time that someone's seen that particular critter?
Yeah, I do, because there's a gentleman named Dr. Tom Iliff. Thomas Iliff.
Tom came over as well. Yeah.
So he is the critter guru the cave critter guru of the world. He knows more about underwater cave adapted marine life than anybody on the planet. And a lot of people don't realize that Tom has been in more cave than probably anybody in the world. He's been all over the world. He always jokes with me, "Hey, figure out a place for us to go find new species." And I'll think, and I'm like, let's go look for critters in lava tube caves in Galapagos. Oh yeah, I did that in '87. That was great. So I mean, it's just, I can't find a place that he hasn't already been looking for cave animals. And he's also an incredible explorer. He laid a lot of the first line in the caves in Bermuda when he was at the Bermuda Field Station. Right. So he's quite a bit of exploration himself. But getting back to the critters, everything I know about cave animals, I learned from Tom. He's just incredible, and he's been very patient with me learning the different species, but because I'm in there all the time, and I have a little knack for observation and actually being able to pick these tiny little critters out of the background. So I've always sent him samples, and he's come here and we've done expeditions, and we always find new species. The paper finally came out after 3 years on a new species that I discovered of a new remipede, which is a tiny little. If you've ever seen a centipede, think of a small centipede that's translucent or very white colored, and is the oldest living crustacean on Earth. And now they were discovered here. Yeah, they were discovered here in the Bahamas by Dr. Jill Yeager. And then once we realized what they weren't actually just fossils, they were actually still alive. Now we have 28 species all over the world. You guys have one in Western Australia.
I was going to say, are they peculiar to that one area, or are they widespread?
They're predominantly in the Caribbean. Mexico, the Bahamas are the two hot spots in the Caribbean, but they're also the one species in Western Australia, and then I think there's one in the Canaries, the Canary Islands, and then by far most of them are actually in the Bahamas. In fact, Dan's Cave, where I dive every day, is a hotspot. We have 5 different species in that one cave system, which is more than anywhere else.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have the ecosystems, and we have all these different animals that live in different and create different parts of this food chain, this totally lightless, low energy environment. And we have one of the best ecosystems of that here in the Bahamas. I'm constantly stopping when I'm guiding, and I'll put my light up like this, and then I'll put my finger here, and usually the critter's right between the two, and I'll try to show people. Everybody wants to see the big crystals and the big pillars and stuff, and here I am trying to show them this little tiny bug. But I just think they're amazing. I have
It
a
sort of
bunch of,
rewrites the book about life, doesn't it? In
well,
terms of
definitely, these animals are living in either low or no oxygen environments and low energy, meaning there's not a lot of food. So it really tells us a lot about what life was like before the algae came and created all this oxygen and trees and that type of thing. So, but again, helping to discover new species, I've got half a dozen named after me now, and as somebody, like I said, barely graduated from high school, to be involved in that level of science it's just fantastic, man. It's like exploring new cave, finding new critters is the same.
Sorry, Brian, I have to ask, just what's one of the names, one of the critters, when you say it's named after you? How do they incorporate your name?
So there's a tiny little crustacean. It looks like a clam, but it's only about the size of maybe a sesame seed.
Right.
And it's actually, it looks like a clam. It has two shell halves, but instead of being a mollusk and sitting on the bottom, it actually opens slightly, and it has a little shrimp guy inside there, and his antennas come out, and they actually swim with their antennas like this, and it's called ostracod. And ostracods are found, they're crustacean, they're found all over the world. They're in freshwater, saltwater, abyssal depths. They're even found in the water that gets trapped in bromeliads during the rain. There's little ostracods that live in those. But I found one, and Tom named it after me, and it's called Daniela Polina, which is the genus, and then my last name, which is Kakuk, and it's so Daniela Polina Kakuki. So I have a couple of Kakuki. I have a fish, a remipede, an ostracod, a shrimp. Yeah, so it's kind of fun.
Great thing to have. No, it is, isn't it? I'm very impressed with that. So getting back to where you live, the island that you live on, and the caves there.
Yeah. So in the early 2000s, I came here to give a presentation for the Bahamian government, and every time I go to a new island giving presentations, I always hook up with some of the locals, and they take me around and show me the local caves. And somebody had asked me to guide them in a place that I hadn't really been to yet. So, well, I just got all these new numbers, these new GPS coordinates on all these caves in Abaco. Why don't we do that? Okay, great. And so we come down here and we dive in this one cave called Sawmill Sink. And there used to actually be a sawmill back in the early 1900s. And we dove down in there and found some other people's lines that had explored some of the cave. And it's a little deeper. It's sort of about 60 meters in depth. And so we're doing a little bit of decompression, very, very thick hydrogen sulfide zone. So as organic matter decays, the byproduct is hydrogen sulfide gas. And then there are microbes that consume that. And there's so many microbes, so many bacteria that it sucks all the oxygen out of the water. And it creates these very caustic layers, these chemical layers in the water, and it stratifies out. So we were below that, decompressing, and my hand accidentally slipped into the muck, this organic muck, and something bit me in there. I was like, oh man, that really hurt. And I moved some of it away, seeing if maybe there was a big toothy critter in there. And what I saw was a full row of teeth of a crocodile skull, completely intact. The jaw and the top and everything was all intact. So I just got bit by a crocodile in the Bahamas. And so I started looking around, and then I saw on the other side this big tortoise shell. I said, there's no tortoises in the Bahamas. There's no such thing as tortoises. It's got to be a sea turtle that somebody threw in here as a meal, and then this hydrogen sulfide must have warped the shell or something like that. And I thought about it that night, and I was like, no, man, I grew up with desert tortoises as a kid in California. That was a tortoise. So we went back the next day just to verify, and sure enough, it was a giant tortoise. It was really, really big. And so I reported it. And so the government brought all these experts down and everything, and I excavated one of them. They're like, dude, this is a whole new species. And so the government asked me to keep coming back and doing more excavations in this particular site. And I started learning the caves in Abaco. And then I realized, holy cow, these caves here are amazing. They're long, they're beautifully decorated, there's crystal everywhere. And I was just at a point where I was finishing up a job on a movie. I was diving safety officer for a feature film called Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3, which we were filming. We're filming that in Grand Bahama. So I said, man, I've made just enough money on this film. Maybe I could start a little dive shop in Abaco and take people cave diving there. And that's how I ended up here. And then this cave system has been an obsession, where it's 12 miles long now, and it's getting longer all the time.
And what are so you've got the crystal caves there?
Yeah, so we've called them the crystal caves. The limestone here in the Bahamas is incredibly pure. So when the sea levels were lower, and the caves were dry, the water was dripping into the caves and made these beautiful stalactites and stalagmites, and every formation you can think of, helictites, curly helictites, and they're all from this very pure crystal because of our very pure limestone. And these caves have been dry caves that you could walk around in 4 different times over the last 360,000 years. We've actually dated some of the styles. So it's been an incredible place to be for science, for exploration, and to start a business. I have a business partner, Michael Albury, who has been very kind enough to let me be a partner in a business that doesn't make any money. It just keeps me here doing what I love to do. And his wife, Nancy Albury, is my research partner. We do a lot of stuff. She was working for the National Museum of the Bahamas, and she had an office here. So all of these things that I was finding, all these fossils, all this other stuff was being curated in her office, right in the same compound that my business. And so there was this great relationship. We have the science going on, we have the business going on, and it's all from the same cave systems. And we've been all over this country doing all this amazing work. And so my bread and butter is guiding here on Abbott, and here there's nothing like them in the world as far as beauty and decoration, and 100-meter visibility every day, regardless of whether it's a monsoon or a hurricane or whatever. If you're willing to dodge flying pine trees, you can still go cave diving here. We don't get in Florida, you have the caves get flooded out during certain times of the year, and that time. Not us. The only thing that's kept us out is forest fires. The caves are back in these beautiful pinewood forests.
Yeah.
We have annual fires, so there's been a couple days where we couldn't dive because of fires.
With the images, you tried to show, or started to show some images earlier. Are you able to show some of those of the caves?
I'm just gonna put it up over the screen here, and we'll just kind of thumb through some of them. Let me just kind of highlight a bunch of them real quick. Oops. Just give me 1 second.
And where can people sort of see your images? On your website? Do you have a?
Yeah. So we have a website called BahamasUnderground.com. But also, if you really want to see some pretty images, go to my Instagram, which is Bahamas, then underscore, then underground. So Bahamas_underground. And you'll be able to see. All right, I'm going to bring up some images here. So I'll just sort of scroll through some of these. So this is in Dan's cave. We've connected Dan's cave to Ralph's cave, which is about 2,000. The 2 entrances are about 2,000 feet apart. And so it's all one system now. And this cave is 3-tiered, meaning that we have miles of cave at 24 meters or 75 feet deep. Below that, we have miles of cave at about 32, 33 meters, 100, 120 feet, 110 feet. And then we have miles and miles below that at about 47 to over 50 meters. And it's all interconnected. And these are all in relation to high and low sea levels during glacial and interglacial periods. The Bahamas platform is one of the most stable carbonate platforms or limestone platforms in the world. So we haven't moved up and down tectonically since the separation of Pangea. Since the supercontinent divided, we've always been this shallow, we've been this shallow carbonate sea. So there's all this reef building, and then calcareous muds and algae and stuff. They build up, and then they actually have been pushing limestone down into the Earth's crust. So they've done cores into the earth here, 6,000 meters down, and never hit anything but marine sediment.
Wow.
So we've been, and what's really cool and really exciting for me is that 6,000 meter core that they drilled into the limestone. When they got down to 6,000 meters, they hit a void, and the void was so big that it ate the drill pipe, and they couldn't tap back into it. So what that means is you have cave development going on up near the surface where there's fresh water, and then as that ancient cave, as that limestone subsides and gets pushed down into the Earth's crust, those fossil caves are staying with it. All right, and so we've got all this throughout that whole 6,000 meters of limestone being pushed into the Earth's crust. There are more and more. There's more caves that have been developed, and we're just diving the newer stuff up near the surface. So here's remember we talked about the Sahara dust, that red African dust. Well, this is an image by Jill Heinrich, I think, or is this my one? No, this is my copy of hers. So I reshot this. Hers is actually a little bit better, but it shows this amazing red iron-rich dust. And this has all been percolated down through our limestone, this African dust that came across the Atlantic and landed on the islands. And there are places where it's thick clays, very thick red clays, and there's other places where it gets caught up in the crystal matrix like this. This is one of my favorites. This is basically a man-made air bubble from exhaled gases that gets trapped in the ceiling, but it makes a mirror, and you can see the stalactites hanging down, but you can see their mirror images hanging up. Wow. I've done a video of this where I've got a diver way in the background, and you can see him in both the bubble and in the foreground as well. So this is called Ralph's Cave. This is a place called the Glass Factory, which is absolutely stunning. This is also the Glass Factory. So these draperies are so thin and so translucent, essentially you could read a newspaper through them. They're just absolutely phenomenal. And you see how it's curved. There's a bunch of
they look just like lace, doesn't it?
They do. And they're super fragile. Everything in these caves is super fragile. So we really have to be a lot more careful in how we move through the cave. We've adopted a little bit different swimming styles. In Florida and other places in the world, you have this you've seen it a million times, the technical diver pose, right? Where you're horizontal and your fins are up, and you're doing the frog kick. Well, if you do that in many of the portions of these caves, it'll just be raining down crystals, because your feet will knock off all this stuff hanging down. So we've adopted a little bit of a different type of kicking technique that frog kick comes together straight behind us and pushes straight back. So it's to protect things like this. Here's another one that's just completely translucent. You can see light, and this is one of my usual stops on my guided tours. This
it looks almost organic, that one, doesn't it?
It's stunning. It's stunning. And so the last time this cave was dry was between 10,000 and 13,000 years ago. So these delicate, super thin formations have survived 13,000 years of tidal water moving back and forth in these caves. Even our inland caves are still tidal, so they may not have the same animals in them as ocean caves. But this is a bat skeleton that's encased in crystal. It died, fell on the floor about 10,000 years ago, and then the flow stone just kept forming over it. So there's part of it sticks up out of the calcite, but the rest of it is actually embedded down in the calcite.
Yeah,
we call it frozen bat. And this is actually an ocean cave. That's my good friend Christina Zanato, who does the same thing I do. Right. She just does over in Grand Bahama. She's starting to guide over there, but also has her little like mine little research foundations.
Yeah. I think Christina's on a little later, actually. And having said that, I'm just advised that we're running out of time.
Oh, very good. Okay, well,
Brian, I'm sorry, I have to cut short the slideshow.
very good. No problem. Let me get out of this. Just quickly, these are halactites, and these are actually created by bacteria when the cave is dry, and they bring the calcite with them and make these odd, anti-gravity, defying formations, and they're everywhere in these caves. So
just
there
beautiful.
We go.
Mate, Brian, thank you so much. That really has been lovely to catch up with you again. It's
Thank you.
I think the last time we decided to walk to the entertainment center, and it pissed down with rain on us.
That's right. Yeah, that's very true. But thank you for the invitation, and thank you to everyone at ADEX for having me on, and I hope you guys have a great show, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Mate, it was so good to see you, and fairly obviously we'll chat again at some other future stage.
Sure hope so.
Yeah. Kushi, thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing with us today. Thank you, Brian, for that interesting and inspiring presentation. And thank you, David, for moderating the session with Brian. We hope to see you both physically at the Singapore Ocean Week ADEX show in June 2022.
Very good.
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
And for our viewers, if they have any questions for them, please feel free to drop them on our Facebook page, and we will try our best to answer them. So don't forget to like, comment, share, and to win a post, sorry, I apologize. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this post to win the collector's edition of your favorite scuba diver, Australasia and Planet Diverholic for free. Stay tuned for the next session happening shortly, Tech Diving 101 Tips on Cave Diving. So thank you all once again, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.